Right now, Bill de Blasio under fire for keeping schools open yesterday and under attack from Al Roker, of all people, for blaming the weatherman in the process. Is this new mayor's honeymoon now beginning to freeze over as well? And next, you got the snow here, drought out west, and coming soon, the floodwater on the rise. If anybody out there still doesn't believe in climate change, it's time you got a grip here. We're going to talk about what we can expect and if maybe our politicians can have a little political courage and admit the obvious. And then, what better way to warm up than by talking baseball? Derek Jeter starts his journey to Cooperstown. A-Rod starts his journey to the sidelines, and we're talking baseball with Ed Randall. That a lot more is coming up. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us this Friday evening, February 14th. And trust me, we're only going to talk a little snow, mostly in the political sense. We'll give you a little forecast at the end here. But we start tonight in the Big Apple, where everyone continues to fight the stormy weather, and that includes one newly embattled mayor, Bill de Blasio. One day after a controversial phone call to check in also on a friend of his that had been arrested, the mayor is in a heap of hot water for his decision to keep the schools open, followed by finger pointing and forecasters. And for more, let's bring in our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman. And we all knew that he was coming into the mayoralty from maybe a different path than we've seen, and he was certainly taking a different approach. But he hasn't had a good week.
Boy, how many times have we talked on this show about the politics of storm recovery, storm cleanup, snowstorms? It really seems like the mayor put his foot into a whole pile of slush, Rich. New York City mayors take heat from all sides. It really is a part of the job. But when it came to the debate over not closing the city's public schools yesterday, Mayor de Blasio, he may have forgotten a golden rule of politics. Never pick a fight with someone who buys ink by the barrel, or, in this case, is one of the most trusted meteorologists on 2 networks.
New York Mayor Bill de Blasio was already on thin ice, as it were, after being caught on camera eating pizza with a fork and knife, but then came the nor'easter. First, the mayor told the city's 1.1 million school kids to go to school.
I think it's the least bit dangerous they should call it.
That provoked a blizzard, an avalanche, pick your snow metaphor, of anger online, with commenters calling him an idiot and accusing him of endangering children. The mayor stood by his decision.
Given the information we had, it was right to go ahead with schools.
But then, making matters worse in the middle of the weather mess, his new schools chief said this.
And by the way, just coming down here, it has totally stopped snowing. It is absolutely a beautiful day out there right now.
And then to top it off, Mayor de Blasio stepped to the mic and seemed to blame the forecasters.
We had accumulation of roughly 5 to 8 inches by the end of the morning rush hour. And that was heavier and faster than the Weather Service had predicted last night.
Meteorologists shot right back. Al Roker chimed in on Twitter, long-range de Blasio forecast, 1 term. It was all reminiscent of the kerfuffle in Atlanta during the recent ice storm that stranded thousands on the road during rush hour, when the governor also criticized the meteorologists.
Most of the forecast anticipated that the city of Atlanta would only have a mild dusting.
The president of the American Meteorological Society hit back on his blog, saying the buses had a tough time getting kids home, but meteorologists should not be thrown under the bus.
All right, back to Al Roker. He apologized for his tweet, sort of, today, saying the one-term mayor comment was below the line, but he stuck by everything else he had tweeted. De Blasio, surprisingly, canceled his public agenda for today. His spokeswoman joked it was so he could Skype with Al Roker. Rich?
I don't know if you should be kidding around, Andrew. All right, let's bring in, of course, Dominic Carter, political journalist and author who knows city politics as well as anybody I know. And Dom, listen, there's one thing with the stupid eating pizza with a fork and knife, right. But there were a few not ready for primetime moments from this mayor. First off, we talked about it this week. Putting a phone call yourself directly to the precinct commander, where a friend of yours was brought into custody here for suspended license or whatever else that he had, then now taking on, you don't take on forecasters, first of all. And he didn't have to wonder what would happen. He just had to look, as Andrew just showed us, what happened to the Georgia governor when he tried this. And then to sit up there and then try and defend the actions instead of just saying, yeah, you know what, if I had to do it over again, I wouldn't have done it this way. He doesn't look ready for prime time. Really?
It's what some of us said privately before he was elected. Bill de Blasio's known for being deliberate in terms of making his decisions, taking his time, sort of like President Obama. But, you know, if there was to be a honeymoon, bye-bye, it's gone. The mayor has thrown away any good faith that he has with the public, certainly with the media, and they're going to judge him a lot harshly now. You know, it didn't take a rocket scientist to look outside yesterday and say kids should not be in school. Period. That's simple.
And you know, Andrew, we talked before that, and we won't mention on camera the names we were saying, but we know some electeds from this area who, when there's snow, they'll call you, meaning us in the media, and say, I'm ready to do a phone or whenever you want. I'm ready to do, you know, you get me near a camera, I'm ready no matter. And they'll talk till the cows come home because it's one of those things where you're supposed to look present. I even had a problem. Don't be shoveling this. Get into the office here. Get in front and tell everybody what's going on. We can debate. Maybe I was a little harsh. I remember this when this happened. But that's the first rule of politics, is you overplay, you never underplay a storm. You never want people stuck on a highway in their cars. You never want people who have been plowed in or the road's not plowed. I mean, we have history on our side here. John Lindsay, I mean, he never recovered from this one. We've seen other elected struggle too.
The thing is, though, this is really, to my mind at least, there's a lot of paper cuts for Bill de Blasio right now. They're just all coming at the same time. The decision on whether or not to close schools have been closed, what, 11 times in the last 20 years or something like that? It's not something that happens.
Fair enough, but wait a second. Who is the only place in our region that kept schools open?
It was
yesterday?
New York City.
It was
and
New York
City private schools closed also. I agree with you. The problem for de Blasio wasn't the decision to keep schools open, at least to my mind. It was the way that he tried to explain it by blaming the forecast, which I don't think was true. And why would you get into it with Al Roker, of all people?
Exactly.
May as well blame Santa Claus. I mean, it just seems...
And you also lower yourself. You're the mayor of New York City.
It just seems incredibly stupid, and like you're making excuses for... If he'd I can't believe I'm saying this, if he'd channeled his inner Chris Christie and say, that's right, we're keeping schools open because we're tough and that's what we do, it probably would have blown over and not that big a deal. The way that he did it, I thought, showed some weakness. I don't know if it's the end of his honeymoon.
No,
I don't know if it's...
But here's the hook of this is, Dom, it's not like he's coming in and everything's hunky-dory. He's about that he's got to engage in labor fights here. He's taken on the governor of New York over universal pre-K. He came in, he might believe he had a mandate. I don't think he came in with a mandate. He'll believe that. But my only point is he came in certainly with a huge plurality in the election. A lot of people believe in the idea of universal pre-K. But you can't have these kind of missteps. And people are going to wonder if they're going to have your back if you're the right horse to back on these things, right?
Well, first of all, let's put this to rest. It was not a mandate. He did well on election day, but overall, that was only 25% of the vote. How can it be a mandate with only 25% of the vote? Number two, when people are starting to use terms like one term, and you're a brand new mayor, and certainly when you're as popular as Al Roker, that's not a good thing. And let's be honest, we've heard people privately talk about de Blasio as a one-term mayor, so this is not new. Things are not looking good right now. He needs a good communications director, someone that can sit him down and lay down the law of the land, because right now he's not doing so hot.
I'll tell you guys, for me, the one thing that came out of this week here that might not have got as much play, the idea of any mayor that we know, or any governor, when you're mayor of New York City, you might as well be a governor, okay? The idea that you would be so naive to pick up a phone call personally and call a precinct commander. I mean, it's not the end of the world. We're not going to be talking about this in a week or two. And the guy wasn't in there for some horrific offense. But the idea that you wouldn't know, to talk to your police commissioner or to talk to one of your subordinates to work back channels if you were going to check it out. The idea that you think it wouldn't get out. And then if you saw him at the presser yesterday, he got red-faced when he was asked about it. To me, that got my attention. I mean, come on. This is New York City. You got to know how the game's played, right?
The bottom line, mayors will check all the time on top supporters if their supporters end up in trouble or so on. But a major no-no. The person you're referring to is a deputy inspector. You don't pick up the phone and call directly as the mayor of New York yourself and go, oh, I'm just checking the status of the arrest. It doesn't fly. because we don't know what the rest of that conversation was. The police official said that he didn't inquire on when the man will be released and so on. But somehow, magically, he was released before appearing before a judge.
More important than reality.
You get the feeling, or at least the hope, that somebody on the mayor's staff is going to go like, okay, give me your cell phone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and you know what? Now your phone that you have got by your bed, that goes to a switchboard, so somebody has to, like, those calls have to go through somebody else. He shouldn't be directly dialing.
You know, to your point, I think you're right. We're talking paper cuts here.
We are.
Nothing's fatal. And I saw him on Jon Stewart and stuff. He was able to poke fun of himself. I thought he had a sense of humor about this. But he's talking about a very progressive agenda he wants to do. And I applaud him for a lot of it. So it's not like I'm coming down on him. But if you want to take the city, in this particular case, with an ambitious agenda, you first have to prove competency. You don't get to do that as you go along. And these little things, and I grant you they're little, we're not going to be talking about this in a month completely. You can't show people that you're not ready for prime time, but then ask people to make prime time commitments to you on the really important stuff. We've seen it before. I mean, I don't think I'm being too harsh over this stuff.
But let's be honest, the mayor's progressive agenda was a campaign stump speech, and it's dead on arrival. It's not going to fly with Governor Cuomo. Governor Cuomo,
anything that he can change on the city level, he's going to change.
But the city council is nothing. I mean, that's minor stuff. The major things that he wants done has to go past the governor's desk. And one by one, the governor is going, no, no, no.
However, you may be right here, but we already saw Senator Klein align himself with Bill de Blasio here, which came as a little bit of a surprise to some of us. We're going to see how this plays out. But I will say, for all these little things like school days or calling precinct houses, the stuff adds up. And when people are going to decide whether they're going to take your side or the governor's, this stuff goes in the debit column, not the credit column. And believe me, and Dom and Andrew will back me up on this, it actually does matter on that level. Okay. To be continued. Okay, when we come back here, we're going to switch to a more serious subject, something I feel really strongly about here. The weather's been crazy. We all know that here. We got blizzards here. You got west, they got droughts and concerns about water. You got flooding where London's underwater here. This is not just a weather issue. This is a question of climate change, and real consequences in the short, medium, and long term. We're going to get into the science and also the politics of doing something about it. That's straight ahead.